relax, open, redirect. A new development can focus attention, even to alert or alarm. Something new can be merely unfamiliar, slightly mysterious, fairly intriguing, or even quite surprising, as indirectly contrary to prior experiences and established expectations. When something is surprising, it may seem to fit with some expectations, but not others, as in seeming confusing. Confusing means that I have some familiarity with the surprising new development, but some awareness that my prior perception has not been entirely accurate or relevant. I may not even fully recognize yet that I may have been confusing one thing for another, as in misinterpreting or misidentifying. I may say things like, "That is confusing me," or "You are confusing me," rather than simply recognizing that I even might have been confusing one thing with something else. So this brings us to the idea of relax, open, redirect. There's a time for focus, of course. However, there may also be a time for relaxing, and the experience of confusion may be a clear signal first to relax. If I know that I'm not clear about something relevant, one possible response is to keep proceeding as I was already proceeding, perhaps even more stubbornly. For instance, if I'm speaking to a deaf person, I might try to speak louder or slower. However, if I'm speaking to a person who is deaf, or simply who does not speak the language I've been using, then the speed and volume may not be relevant at all. I might try writing something instead of yelling it at them, because they're deaf. See, they can't hear however slowly I speak or however loud or soft. So the responsibility for my own experience of confusion may be within my own range, within my own power. After I relax, I may be able to learn by experimenting attentively, not with frustrated intensity and like repeating the same thing over and over, but after relaxing and while staying relaxed. I may be able to quickly establish the correct interpretation or relevant clarity, and I may not. However, reactively tightening my grip on my model of what I expected is not likely to end my confusing of one thing for something else. I can admit that I may have been confusing one thing for something else. Relax away from whatever expectation or presumption I had about what was going on. Then open to a new clarity, a correct understanding, a relevant perception. Then, after I open to a new clarity, I can redirect my attention toward learning. What action can I use to test my prior expectations and presumptions? For some of them may be relevant, perhaps just not all of them. So what action can I use to explore, to test, to learn? By the way, the expectations and presumptions may have been inaccurate. But if I've been in the mode of shaming myself for having had an inaccurate perception, or of blaming someone for allegedly being responsible for my inaccurate perception, then it may be time to go back to step one. Relax. What is more relevant? Anything about the inaccurate perception? Or everything about whatever perception is accurate and relevant? Let's take an example that is well known and relevant to many people. People may say, "These rising fuel prices are confusing," or "Those economic changes are confusing," or "That price decline is confusing." Relax, open, and redirect. In such a case, the people speaking of these external developments being confusing may have simply been confusing one thing for something else. For instance, they may have confused prior fuel prices as being accurate estimates of future fuel prices. Past prices are not inherently future estimates, though. Future estimates are not even inherently accurate. They're estimates. That's why different people make different estimates using different methods. That's why they're called estimates. Of course, people may use past prices to estimate future prices. That's natural enough. However, the estimating is done by the people estimating, not by the prior prices. It's nothing inherent in the prices that is confusing. The confusing is done by the people maybe not recognizing that an estimate was just an estimate. The prior prices were just prior prices. The prices are not responsible for my confusion. The prices aren't confusing me. The new developments aren't confusing me. Confusion is something I'm doing. It's a way of relating to some new development as if my old model, my prior model, is more relevant than the new development. What if I notice upon the instant that confusion arises, that confusing is happening by me, that behavior of confusing? What if I notice that behavior and then let my model be? Okay, that's the model I had. And then let's look here at this new development. Let's check it out. Is it something I want to learn more about? If it's not that important, fine. My old model was inaccurate and I'm not that interested, and we're done. Or maybe I am interested. Maybe I am interested in some new development. And if I am interested, then my old model may not be useful. Maybe setting aside that old model, recognizing that I'm the one who's been confusing one thing for something else. That means I am the one who can then choose to focus away from the old model and focus toward the new development and learn. That's the redirect part. So it's relax, open. Open kind of means, in a way, you could say, let the old model just be an old model. Okay, that was the old model. Thank you very much. Moving on. Redirect towards the new development. Let's see what's up with this. Is it relevant? Is it interesting? Can I learn about it? Is it valuable? If not, then we're done. If so, then there's that learning process. So, of course, people may use past prices to estimate future prices. However, the estimating is done by the people estimating, not by the prior prices. The prior prices were just prior prices. In fact, in the absence of some relevant seeming reason to expect prices to rise or fall, the obvious simple choice is to use prior prices to estimate future prices. It's totally natural. Sometimes this may work perfectly, sometimes imperfectly. Sometimes an estimate may later be recognized as having been high or low. That's because it was an estimate. But none of that is inherently confusing. Estimates are just estimates, prices are just prices, models are just models. So this brings us again to this idea of relax, open, redirect. There's a time for focus and a time for just focusing on the new development. But the first thing may be to relax from the prior focus, that prior model. All right. So what about prices? What about these gas prices and housing prices and stock prices and so forth? Well, what would be confusing is to interpret prior prices to be inherently stable. That would be really confusing if I have a model of prices that prices are inherently stable. Prices just are not inherently stable. Prices are inherently subject to change, like most other things, right? In fact, maybe more so than many things. Kind of like weather. We know weather is subject to change. Weather is relatively predictable. Prices may be less predictable than weather. Prices for a certain period of time may be more consistent than weather. Of course, weather, that's a pretty big category. Weather where? Some places, weather is very consistent. Some places, weather varies considerably. So, back to prices. Someone can list their real estate for sale with an asking price of $300,000, but that asking price is not an estimate of a future sales price. It's just an asking price. The asking price is just the price that the prospective buyer is asking. Further, until the real estate is sold, the prospective seller is just a prospective seller. And the asking price is just a prospective price of a possible future transaction. So someone can list their real estate for the same asking price for quite a while. For months, years, decades, or however long they own it. A stable asking price does not reflect the inherent instability of actual market prices, actual transaction prices, which can change very quickly or very slowly, but can be presumed to always change eventually because they're prices, and the inherent intrinsic nature of prices is that they always change eventually. They're inherently stable. They're inherently unstable. So, further, a particular model of change may be confused for being inherently the most accurate model eternally. That would be confusing a symbolic model for the symbolized reality. In fact, reality changes too, but models are just models. Models of reality are part of reality, right? They're real models, but they're just models. But they're within that part of reality called symbolic models. Models are for estimating and predicting and refining. If a model is evidenced to be inaccurate or irrelevant, then a revision to the model may be more accurate or more relevant. A revising, a refining of the model. So models are not supposed to be permanent, necessarily. There's supposed to be lots of them. They're all oversimplified. Oversimplified principles. They're guidelines. But that's what they are. They're always just guidelines. They're always just tools for presuming. So if a model is evidenced to be inaccurate or irrelevant, then a refining or revision to the model may be more accurate or relevant. Models are always oversimplifications. Models are always presumptive. Using a model that does not fit with the actual circumstances is like raising my voice to shout at a person who is deaf, as if that would be useful. When a model clearly is not working, then it may be relevant to consider using an alternate model, or simply even creating a new one altogether. Circumstances are never inherently confusing. Circumstances are just circumstances. In fact, circumstances are just our perception of circumstances. Our measurements. Prices are just measurements. Those are measurements. Is any particular method of measuring something the best method? No. That's just that method. So prices are actually measurements. When I say prices, I mean overall market prices are measurements. They're based on actual list prices or asking prices and actual bids or selling prices, things like that. But a lot of prices are measurements, and every form of measurement is precise only to the extent it's precise. So some pricing measurements, some pricing methods may be relatively imprecise, or they may be quite precise last week or last year, but no longer precise. not the method, I mean the price, the outcome of the measurement. It reminds me of a principle of physics. By the time a measurement has happened and is completed, something new is already possible. Something could have already changed by the time the measurement's completed. Even in quantum physics, we hear about the way that something is measured and the expectations about it actually can affect it's part of reality. Our expectations are part of reality. Our measurement methods are part of reality. Our models are part of reality. So circumstances are never inherently confusing. Perceptions are never inherently confusing. In any particular process, some models are always more relevant than others. Some detail of circumstance is always more important than certain other details. That's what more important means. So those who claim that certain price changes are confusing may not be clear yet about what confusion is. Confusion is merely an incongruence between a model and a circumstance. Relax, open, redirect. Confusion is merely an incongruence between a model and a circumstance. The circumstance is never inaccurate. The circumstance is just a circumstance. Confusion is the result of using a model that does not fit currently as relevant. Confusion is not the result of a new development. Confusion is the result of interpreting a new development through an old model that does not fit with the new development. Finding out that one has been using a model that does not work in a particular circumstance is the first step in either learning what model would fit, or at least in learning about the nature of confusion itself. Maybe I simply recognize my own confusion, then withdraw from trying to force my prior model on some present circumstance, and then withdraw completely. I may just, find, okay, I'm going to focus on what's clear. That's not clear. Let me find something that is clear. Or maybe I invite or request someone else to assist me. Maybe I say, this is something relevant to me, but it's confusing for me. I'm clear that I don't know how to properly interpret this. And maybe I know that another person with whom I'm interested in interacting is not deaf and can definitely hear me, but they just do not understand my language. So maybe then I ask for an interpreter. Maybe, again, I just focus elsewhere. But I can ask someone to assist me, like an interpreter. They might be able to do so. Things might go a little bit more efficiently and effectively. I recognize my incapacity to personally and independently produce a result of value to me, so I get assistance, and it may go a lot better. My confusing one thing for another is temporary. It's always temporary. Confusing or confusion, any activity and habit of confusing one thing for another is always temporary. That is, it's not inherently permanent. It's always subject to change, kind of like prices. All confusing of one thing for another is temporary. My confusing of one thing for another is temporary. All confusing of one thing for another is temporary. In regard to confusing a risky market for a stable market, once I see that prices are moving faster than I expected, I may wonder how risky a certain market is, because obviously it's not as stable as I had previously understood in my prior confusion. Just like I might ask for an interpreter to communicate with someone whose language I do not speak, which could even be the sign language of a deaf person, I might seek the assistance of someone who accurately predicted whatever price changes I did not accurately predict, or the other people that I was relying on for information and intelligence and direction and guidance and so forth. If I didn't, and no one that I know or no one that I'd currently been trusting and relying on predicted those particular changes, then I might be really curious, even motivated, depending on how much concern I have about investment stability and investment risk and so on. I might be very motivated, in fact, to seek the assistance of someone who accurately predicted the price changes of the recent past that might have surprised or even confused me, that I might have confused for something else, that is. By the way, I'm among the people who predicted the rising of fuel prices, the decline of real estate lending and borrowing, and the fall of real estate prices, and the fall of stock market prices, not just in the U.S., but including in the U.S., and also the sequence of which would happen when, like first this, then second that, then next third, and so on. By 2004, I called that sequence the domino effect. I continue to predict future prices based on basically the same models, slightly refined, but basically the same models that have been consistently accurate for me for the last 9 years. And I didn't originate most of these, if any. I simply refined some stuff, put some things together that other people had done back to 1956. In the case of the geologist Dr. Hubbard, who anticipated the peaking of conventional oil production worldwide, as well as conventional oil production just within the U.S. He did his predictions using this really great thing called mathematics. And many people didn't necessarily receive his predictions and projections and estimates with pleasure or openness. Some people were committed to models that did not necessarily accurately fit with what actually happened. By the 1970s, presidents of the U.S., Nixon, Ford, and Carter, all emphasized the kinds of forecasts that Dr. Hubbard had made in commenting about the present and future energy crisis, particularly for the United States, but not limited to the United States. In the case of the 1970s, we had oil available from many other parts of the world that we began to import. And that continuing rising demand for oil as supplies grew less and less quickly, then flattened, then peaked in 2006, and then began to fall. That, along with changing efficiency in the extracting and refining of oil, with advances in computer technologies, since 1956 when Dr. Hubbard started his research, and since the 1970s when those presidents were commenting on the energy crisis at the time, we have a relatively simple scenario. Technology has advanced tremendously, continues to advance in terms of accessing and refining oil. However, the amount of oil on the planet seems to be declining pretty quickly in the last couple hundred years since humans found crude oil, while demand in the last few hundred years has been rising pretty quickly. So, prices of oil are subject to rise, subject to change, subject to fall too, at least, for periods of time. Maybe there will be a huge technological advance in computers or something else that allows for oil to be extracted and refined at a much reduced cost than today or tomorrow or last decade's technology. Until then, or until demand shifts, or until a really huge new discovery of oil is found, or maybe until some old discovery of oil is revised and people say, oh, it wasn't as big as we thought. Well, until then, we can expect trends to keep on, perhaps more or less like they have been. So back to prices in general and models and confusion and clarity. If you've been confusing inaccurate models for accurate models, then you may have been not only surprised but confused by price changes that did not fit those inaccurate models. Remember, prices are just prices. Models are just models. If you've been confusing any particular model with a model that's going to be useful in every case or is going to be useful forever, that may be a confusion about the nature of models. Prices are just prices, models are just models. So, actual market prices are never inaccurate. That's the price. That's a price. There might be many other prices, right? And you take an average, and then you get a different computation. You get a different number if you're averaging prices. But anyway, actual market prices are never inaccurate. They're never inherently confusing in and of themselves. Actual market prices are just actual market prices. Economic developments and all other developments are not inherently confusing. Confusion, again, arises in our way of relating to some new development in relation to a prior model, a prior expectation. Otherwise, it would merely be surprise. Oh, I didn't know that. I see that that doesn't fit. Confusion is when we didn't even know we had a presumptive model in operation, and we find out, hey, I'm confused. I must have a presumptive model in operation. I wonder what it is. Well, I can just relax. I don't necessarily need to find out what is that presumptive model, but that's one possible redirect that I could explore. So, actual market prices are just actual market prices. Similarly, prices for actual transactions are not asking prices, and asking prices are not prices of actual transactions until they get met by a bid and a purchase transacts. So actual price changes are not models of prospective price changes in the future. However, actual price changes may be used to create and refine models of prospective price changes, like estimates of future trends and future prices and so on. Confusing one thing for something else is just confusing one thing for something else. Confusing one thing for something else is not evidence that a particular circumstance is inherently confusing or that it should be fixed to be how it should be and kept that way. Confusing one thing for something else is just confusing one thing for something else. Further, any claim about how any person should be is just an interpretation or model. Every model is useful in some circumstance, and there are always circumstances in which a particular model is not useful. Models are just models. Circumstances are just circumstances. When a model and a circumstance fit, those two fit together. When two of them do not fit, those two do not fit. Nothing is inherently confusing, not even confusion. Relax. Open. Redirect.